high availability solution. Give me a moment. Let me. Okay. So in today's class, we'll discuss about always on. So another high availability and disaster recovery concept, which is available from only SQL Server 2012 and above versions. Before that, we don't have a concept of always on. So always on in 2012 and 2014, 2012 and 2014 versions, it will only work on enterprise edition. From 2016 onwards, it will also work on enterprise as well as standard edition. Okay, so when it comes to the always on, so what are the things we are going to learn in always on means? So what is always on? What are the prerequisites? How it is working? That's mean working architecture, failover process, configuration, and remaining topics related to DB repression always on, file adding, user adding, disaster recovery testing, and issues and troubleshooting, and then finally interview question and answers. So these are the things we are going to discuss about always on. So when it comes to the definition, what is always on? So when you generally will get this question in interview point of view. So we have to clear about what is always on. So when you get this question, so we have to tell about always on is a database level disaster recovery and availability solution, which is only available from SQL Server 2012 and above version. In 2012 and 2014, it only work on enterprise edition. From 2016 onwards, it will work on standard as well as enterprise edition. Okay, so Microsoft implemented always on to replace the database mirroring. So that is the reason many people are saying always on is a replacement of database mirroring, or maybe enhanced or maybe advanced concept of database mirroring. So we've seen already few limitations in database mirroring. Those are we cannot directly read the mirror databases. That is the one limitation. And the second one is that we cannot use more than one mirror server. That's mean the DR server in DR location, we cannot use more than one mirror server. One principal, one mirror. But when it comes to the always on, we have an option to read the mirror databases. That's mean DR databases. And the second one is that we can use more than one DR databases. In 2012, we can use up to 4 replicas. That's mean 4 DR servers. From 2014 onwards, we can use up to 8 replicas. So these are the two limitations we see in mirroring. The third one is that the third limitation is that we cannot take backup from mirror databases. We cannot do any operations in mirroring from mirror database. But when it comes to the always on, in always on we can also perform the backup from the secondary servers. Secondary servers are maybe DR servers we can say. And the fourth limitation for database mirroring is that mirroring is not suitable when application using more than one database. But here it is suitable even if application using more than one databases for always on. So these are the 4 limitations we identified in mirroring. All are overcome in always on. So that is the reason Microsoft clearly saying that mirroring is a deprecated feature from SQL Server 2012 onwards. People wants to use mirroring concept, mirroring working procedure, we can prefer to use the always on. So nowadays, everyone prefer to use the always on instead of database mirroring, right? So always on will support the automatic failover, it will support the manual failover. So both failovers it will support. And again, in mirroring, it will work in 2 different working methodologies. Again, in mirroring, it will work in 2 different methodologies. We can configure mirroring in 3 different modes. When it comes to the always on is working in 2 methodologies, and only we can configure always on in 2 ways. Okay, so those methodologies are asynchronous and synchronized method. Asynchronous means whatever data comes to the principal server, that's means production database, later the data will send to the mirror server, right? So the principal server doesn't care whether data is committed at mirror or not. So the kind of working procedure we can call it as a asynchronous method in mirroring, and it doesn't support automatic failover, it doesn't support manual failover, and we need to accept the data loss. So that is the attributes of asynchronous method. When it comes to the synchronous method, whatever data comes to the principal server, the data will send to the mirror server before committing at principal server. After sending the data to the mirror server will send a notification to principal server. When principal server received the confirmation, at a time, the data will commit at principal server and mirror server. So this procedure, this working methodology, we can call it as a synchronous method, right? So whatever behavior we seen in mirroring, the same behavior applicable for always. When it comes to the working procedures or working methodologies, those are same in mirroring and always. Okay, so in mirroring, the two types of configurations, so the methodologies, asynchronous, how it is behaving in mirroring, the same way asynchronous method will behave in always on. The same for synchronized method. Whatever behave, how it is behaving in mirroring, the same way it will behave here in always on. So when it comes to the configurations modes in always on, in always on, we have two modes, asynchronous commit mode and synchronous commit mode. That means we can directly say that methodologies and configuration modes are same. Asynchronous commit mode and synchronous commit mode. So don't get confused. In mirroring, it will work in two different methodologies, asynchronous and synchronous, but we can configure mirroring in three ways. Asynchronous method we can configure in one way, that we can call it as a high performance mode. When it comes to the synchronous method, we can configure mirroring in two ways. High safety without automatic failover, high safety with automatic failover. But when it comes to the always on, it will work in two methodologies and we can configure in only two ways. Based on the methodology, we can directly call the configuration name. Asynchronous commit mode and synchronous commit mode. Now come to the always on. In the standard naming convention is production server and DA server, and mirroring, in mirroring we are using the different names, and log slipping we are using the different names, right? The same way when it comes to the always on, as per always on naming convention, we are calling production server as primary replica, and DA server we can call it as a secondary replica. In mirroring, we can call it as principal and mirror, but when it comes to the always on, production server, we can call it as a primary replica, and DR servers, we can call it as a secondary replica. In always on, we can, in 2012, we can use one primary replica, four secondary replicas. From 2014 onwards, we can use one primary replica, 8 secondary replicas. Another advantage from SQL Server 2014 onwards is that one replica we can place in always, we can place in cloud environment, the cloud platform. So that means we can directly configure always from on-premises local machines to cloud machines. So that is also, that is the one of the announcements happening in SQL Server 2014 and above versions. Right? So this is the little overview of always on. What is always on? How it is working always on? And what are the different type of configurations we have? Asynchronous commit mode and synchronous commit mode. Asynchronous will work like a disaster recovery solution. Disaster recovery solution, and synchronous commit mode will work like a high availability solution. So asynchronous commit mode, when you select the asynchronous commit mode, so we need to accept the minimal data loss. It doesn't support automatic failover, but it supports manual failover. And comes to the asynchronous commit mode. Comes to the synchronous commit mode, it support automatic failover, it support manual failover, and there is no data loss at all. Right? So these are the two difference. These are the differences between asynchronous commit configuration and synchronous commit configuration. Right. So when it comes to working procedure, same as mirroring. So there is differences. So if it is a asynchronous commit mode, first the data will comes to the primary replica, data committed primary replica sent to the data to the secondary replica through endpoints. And primary replica doesn't care whether that is committed mirror or not. That is the asynchronous commit configuration or asynchronous method, working method. And comes to the synchronized commit mode or synchronized method, that means whatever data comes from application, first data will comes to the primary replica, later the log records log records will send to the mirror server through endpoints. Once data received by the secondary replica will send a notification to primary replica. When primary replica receive a notification from secondary replica, at a time data will committed primary replica as well as secondary replica. So in this configuration, there is no data loss and it will also support automatic failover. So when it comes to the mirroring, if you want to use automatic failover, we require the witness server. But when it comes to the always on, we don't require witness server or any other third server to control the automatic failover. Internal mechanism will control automatic failover using two servers. So that is the worry of database, always on, right? If you clear about definition of always on and types of mirror, types of always on configuration, next we need to look into the always on prerequisites. What are the prerequisites we required for configuring always on? So whatever prerequisites we required for database mirroring, all prerequisites required for always on. The same. So there is no single difference. Whatever prerequisites we required for database mirroring, everything we required for the always on. Those are minimum we require the two servers, same configuration, same edition, same version, same patch level, and database name should be same in principal server and mirror server, right? Again, the same name we need to use it in always on, and path should be same. Whatever path, whatever locations we are using for production server, the same path we need to maintain on DR servers, and each servers need to communicate each other. And SQL Server service account must have connect permissions on endpoints, because always on mirroring both are depending on endpoints to transfer the data between production server to DR server, right? And another important one is that the database must be running with full recovery model. Okay, these are the prerequisites we use it for mirroring. All prerequisites we require for always on. Apart from these prerequisites, we required other four important prerequisites for always on. Right, so those are very important. Those are minimum two servers, and whatever servers are participating in always on, those servers should be in Windows cluster, right? So what is Windows cluster and how to configure Windows cluster, those we'll learn in later classes. And the important point is that Windows cluster is not configured by database administrator. It is only configured and configured by the separate team. We can call it as a server team or Windows team. So they are the responsible for configuring Windows cluster. For example, customer requested us to configure always and between node 1 server to node 2 server. Node 1 we have a prod SQL server, and node 2 we have a DR server. If a customer requesting us to configure always in between these two servers, the first thing what we need to do, that we need to inform to the Windows team. We need to request the Windows team or server team to configure Windows cluster. Okay, that's one of the prerequisites. And apart from that, if it is a 2012, we require the enterprise edition software. So because it is only work on enterprise edition software, that's the second other prerequisites. And comes to the third one, by default always on feature is in disable state. So when installing the SQL server, by default it is in disable. We need to enable always on feature. For enabling, we have to go to the configuration manager, go to SQL server services, go to service properties, and click the always on availability. Here we can see that enable always on availability group. Enable this option, click apply, and we need to restart to affect the changes. So for that we need to restart the services. We're doing on node 2 server, we also need to do it on node 1 server. So that's mean whatever servers are you want to use for always on, all servers we need to enable always on feature. Properties, go to always on availability, enable, apply, and click OK, and restart. Right, minimum two servers. The server should be part of Windows cluster, And we require the enterprise edition software in 2012, and 14 onwards we can also do it in enterprise and standard, but there is some limitations in configurations for standard edition. That will cover it in later classes. And then fourth one is that we need to enable always on feature. By default it is in disabled state. So these are the four important prerequisites we required for configuring always on apart from database mirroring prerequisites. Okay, so the next one is that, so how to verify whether servers are participating in Windows cluster or not? Because sometimes Windows team is saying that we configured Windows cluster, please go ahead with your configuration. So before starting the configuration, we need to ensure that they configure properly the Windows cluster. Okay, in the later classes we'll discuss about how to configure Windows cluster and how to manage the Windows cluster. Those things we'll discuss in later classes. So at this moment, just we'll see that, we'll see how to verify the servers are participating on Windows cluster or not. For verifying that, we have to go to run command, type clueadmin.msc. So before starting the always on configuration, we have to verify that. Okay, so once open this go to the type to and click OK. After that, we'll the left side we can see the some name with the domain name, and there we have to expand that one, and then after that we need to click notes button, click notes tab. Here we can see that if you see the servers information, whatever servers are participating in always on, if the servers are exist or not, here we need to verify that. And another important point is that the status should be up. So here we can see that status with green and up button. That means the servers are fully functioning properly with Windows cluster. Okay, so this way we can verify whether servers are participating in Windows cluster or not. Okay, so go to run command, type clueadmin.msc and go to the nodes and verify the servers are exist in the right side window, and the status also we need to verify the status should be in up with the green symbol. Here we can see that. Okay, so these are the prerequisites to configure always on. Okay, if we clear about prerequisites, then we'll move to the configuration part. If you remember in mirroring, before configuring mirroring, what we did, we initialized the data. For initializing the data, what we did, we took the full backup and log backup from principal server. We restored on the mirror server with no recovery. Then but when it comes to the always on, so we can also do the same. Before starting actual configuration, we took full backup and log backup. We'll restore on the that's mean secondary replicas or DA servers, and then we'll start the configuration. So that's the one option. The second option is that during the configuration also we can initialize the data. Okay, so any of the option we can use it, but if it is a small size of database, we can prefer to use to initialize the data along with the configuration. If it is a use amount large size, then we prefer to initialize the data first, then we'll start the configuration. Okay, so less than 50 GB, 100 GB, we can initialize the configuration. We will initialize the data during the configuration. Okay, so we clear about what is always on, how it is working, what are the different configurations we can configure, we can use to configure always on, right, and prerequisites. Then finally, data initialization and configuration. Okay, so the another important point is that already we configure database mirroring between node 1 server and node 2 server. When configuring the mirroring, endpoints will created, default endpoints will created under endpoints tab, right, mirroring. So the server as accept, it contains only one endpoint. That endpoint we can use it for mirroring as well as always on. No need to create a separate endpoint. And the most important thing, it won't accept multiple endpoints. It accepts only one endpoint per server, and it can be useful. It can be used for mirroring as well as always on. Okay, if you not configure mirroring and you are freshly configuring always on, during the always on configuration automatically endpoints will create it. Okay, we already configure mirroring, so it will use this endpoint will use it for always on as well. Okay, so now let me create an empty database and we'll see the how to configure always on. I'm creating a new database. RIND. We created HRIND database. It is an empty database. That's me no table. Let me create one two table in this database. Okay. Created empty one table, tab one, and let me create one more table. So this database has two tables here, tab one and tab two, right? And this database running with full recovery model. We can see that in the options you can see recovery model. It is running with full recovery model. And the one important step is that whenever we create a new database, immediately we need to take a full backup to change the recovery model from simple to full. Because even if when you create a new database, even it is in full recovery model, until unless we take a full backup, it will behave like a simple recovery model. So we already discussed this one in backup recovery. That means whenever you create a new database, immediately initiate a full backup. Okay. So that's right. So our requirement is that we need to configure always on between node 1 server and node 2 server for the HRIND database. So that is our requirement, right? So for that, we can see the always on high availability tab here. Okay, there is no availability groups here. So right click on the always on availability, new availability group wizard, and then click next. It will display the group name HR app. That's my application name. So HR app I'm giving. And here, so these two options are only available from SQL Server 2012, or sorry, 2016 onwards. Windows Server Failover Cluster are in without the Windows cluster also we can configure, but here select the Windows cluster. In the drop-down box we cannot see the other option. So usually people prefer to use the Windows cluster. So anyway, we configure the Windows cluster. So select the default option, and here we can see the database health detection for database DTC support. What is DTC? That I will cover later. And the database health detection. Based on the database health condition, the failure will happen. So this option is only available from SQL Server 2016 and above. It's a new feature in from SQL Server 2016 and onwards. That means before that, if the database is down or maybe not functioning, the failure will not happen. Based on the instance down, that time only the failure will happen. But here, from 2016 onwards, based on the database health detection, health condition, the failure will happen. If you want, you can select, and if you don't want, you can uncheck this option. I'm selecting, click next, and here we can see the all the list of all the available databases to configure always on. Here we can see that meet prerequisites, and here we can see that whether we can add it or not. If you see that status meets prerequisites, that time that's mean we can I mean it will support to add the database knowledge. I'm selecting HRIND, click next, and this is the important window. So it will as I said, that naming convention for always on is primary replica and secondary replica. All right, node 1 prod is a primary, so it will it's a detect the primary server information. So for adding the DR server or secondary replica, we have to click add replica. Click the add replica button, specify the database name, that is node to DR, click connect. Right. So in 2012 we can use up to 4 replicas, and 14 onwards we can use up to 8 replicas. Clear? Once we add the replicas, then we can select the configuration options. Automatic failover up to 3. Like if you want to go for automatic failover, then we have to select the enable this option. If you don't want to go for, you can uncheck. By default, these are in uncheck. Availability mode or maybe configuration mode, we can say that. Those are two: asynchronous commit mode and synchronous commit mode. Okay, if it is an asynchronous commit mode, it doesn't support automatic failover. See that when you click the, if you enable the automatic failover, automatically it change the configuration mode to synchronize commit mode. Okay, so here I want to configure asynchronous commit mode that will support automatic failover, no data loss, and it will also support manual failover. So based on your standards and then customer requirement, we have to select these options. And the second one is that readable secondary. If you want to read secondary, then we can use the S button. If you don't want, you can select the no button. Okay, so there is another option, read intent only. So that's mean if you want to connect the secondary replica through application, in the application connection string, we have to select a read intent only. Okay, that's the application team. So we have to use read intent only, and again the application team in their connection string, they need to specify read intent only option. So when it comes to the read intent only and readable as, when you're selecting these options, we require the license for the DR server as well. That's means secondary, for secondary replica. If we don't want to use it for read only, we don't need license for secondary replicas. Okay, so that means we need to ask that whether the customer wants to read the data, or whether they need or not, that we need to ask that. If they need, then we need to enable, and we need to get the license for both servers. Okay, so once select these settings, configuration type, and then readable as or no, and then click the endpoints. So as I said that we already configure mirroring on the server, so it will directly use the mirroring endpoints. Here we can see that the endpoint is 5022 for primary, 5022 for secondary replica, and the endpoint name is mirroring. Encrypted data. Encrypted data in the sense data while transferring from between the servers, it will be transferred in the encrypted way. And then service account, as by default connect permissions on endpoints, right? And backup preferences. So here we have a backup preferences. So one of the feature in always on is that it will allow us to take a backup from secondary replicas. We can also take it from primary. We can also take it from secondary. We can also specify the preferences for taking the backup of always on databases. The default option is preferred secondary. When using preferred secondary, automatic backup for this availability group should occur on secondary replica. If there is no secondary replica available, backups will be performed on the primary replica. That's mean all automatic backups occurring on secondary replica. If any reason secondary replica is not available, backups can also perform from primary replica. That is the first option, and that is the recommended and then default option. The second one is that all automatic backup for this availability group must occur on secondary replica. It won't happen on primary if secondary replica down. The third option is that primary only. That's mean all automatic backups for this availability group must occur on the current primary replica. If primary is down, the backups cannot be happen on secondary replica. The third one is that any replica. We can select any replica, but here in the bottom we can backup occurs can any replica in the availability group. But here we can see the preferences, priority. Based on the priority, then the backups will occur, right? So these are the backup preferences. So in the current organizations, we are using the preferred secondary option. Maybe different organization has their own standard. So based on the standard, we need to select uh, the right backup preferences. And then the next tab is listener. Later we will discuss about listener. So listener is a virtual availability group name. That's mean virtual, maybe you can also call it as a alias name. Using this name, we can connect to the always and configure databases. But when using the listener, always pointing to the primary replica. Just note this information. Later we'll see that how to configure and how it is functioning, how to connect availability groups using listener. Those things we'll discuss. Okay. It's an optional. If you want, you can configure. If you don't want, you can ignore and you can go to the next step. The next one is that read-only routing. Again, this is the new feature from SQL Server 2016 onwards. So I think we can route the application. Again, I need to spend some time on that. I need to work on that routing option. So this is only option available from SQL Server 2016 onwards. Okay, I need to spend some time to get more knowledge on read-only routing. Okay, maybe I'll spend some time today and then I'll get back with what exactly the read-only routing. Okay, so here I'm skipping and click next. The main settings are selecting the adding the secondary replicas and set the configuration modes, backup preferences, endpoint. Okay, and then click next. Yeah, so this is called initialization data synchronization process. So here we can see the 4 options, but before 2016 we can only see 3 options. Those are skip initial data synchronization, join only, full database, and log backup. Automatic seeding is available from SQL Server 2016 and above versions. Okay, so if you already initialize the data using backup and restore, we can select the join only. If you want to initialize the data during the configurations, we have to select the second option and we need to specify the network folder. So when selecting this option, what will happen? It will take a full backup and log backup and it will restore on the second replica and continue with the remaining configuration steps. Okay. The third option is that we can skip the initial data synchronization. Later also we can initialize the data, but it is not recommended. So if you want to do that, we can select the last option. Okay, so when it comes to the automatic seeding means, so we don't need to initialize the data. Once configured with the automatic seeding option, after completing the configuration, automatically the data seeding will happen between primary replica to secondary replicas. Okay, so this is the one of the good feature because no need to spend time for backup and restoring and checking that. It will immediately configure and then automatically whatever data in the primary replica automatically that will seed into the secondary replica. Okay, I'm selecting set automatic seeding. And click next. Here we should not have any failed. Here we can see all are success, but there is one warning checking the listener configuration. So because it's a warning, not a failed, so that means we did not enable the listener. So that's the reason we're getting this warning. We can ignore and then we can click next and click finish. So that's our that's it. That is the way we can configure always. And so we selected the group name as HR app. And under availability group, we can see that whatever database information we can see availability group listener. In availability group listener, whatever listeners we configure, those information we can see under availability group listeners. Okay, and here we can see that whatever databases are configured for always on, those database information we can see. Availability replicas. Replicas means whatever server information here we can see that node 1 prod, node 1 tr. You can also easily see that which one is the primary and which one is the secondary. Here in the parentheses we can see primary and secondary. Let me go back to the DR server. That's mean secondary replica. If you remember, when you're configuring always on for HRIND database, we enable the readable secondary. So we can do the read operations. We can see the tables. We can do only read only operations. We cannot do writable operations. So we are in node to server. Select start from tab 1. Okay, so we can read the data, but if you're trying to insert the data, we cannot. Insert into tab 1 values. If you're trying to insert the data, we cannot. So the failed update database because the database is read-only mode. Only we can use the secondary replicas for readable operations. Okay. So when we did not initialize the data, we selected the auto seeding. When you select the auto seeding, the database will automatically created and secondary replica with the name, and then whatever data in primary will automatically seeding to the secondary replica. So you can see tab 1 and tab 2. So that's mean the configuration is working properly. Let me insert a new database, new table, and we'll see that the table is replicating to the secondary replica or not. Create table tab 3 is number and insert into tab 3 is. So we insert a new table on primary replica, that is node 1. Now go and verify the DR server. We can see the tab 3. That's mean immediately. So based on the network speed between the partner server, the data will travel. Here we can see tab 3, node to DR. That's mean the always on configuration is working properly. So again, so Microsoft provided always on dashboard to monitor always on functionality. So for verifying or validating the always on process, go to availability group, right click on it and click show dashboard. So this is very useful for validating always on. Here we can see the status LD, primary instance, failure mode, cluster state, cluster type, which one is the primary configuration information. Okay, and again if you see if there is any issues, again issues information you can see it here, and status synchronizing. Again, if you remember, we discussed about 5 different states for database mirroring: synchronizing, suspended, pending failover, and then suspended. All 5 states applicable for always and as well. Because synchronized means currently the data, both databases are contain the same data, and both are healthy, right? So here we can also see that collect latency data, analyze log block latency. Okay, and here we can have an option to alerts. View always an health events like error information or warnings, whatever it is generating, all kind of information we can do that. We can see that. Okay, so very useful to validate always in process. Okay, issues information, if something goes wrong on any of the partner node, that information also we can see that. Right. So that's mean that is the configuration. Once if you clear about the configuration, we'll see the failover process. How to do the failover, how to do the manual failover, how it is working, automatic failover. So for doing that, okay, if you want to do the generally manual failover, what kind of scenarios we go for doing the manual failover in the sense maintenance activities, especially when you're applying the patches or whether database patches or Windows patches or maybe any kind of maintenance activities. If you want to do that server, so if it is a primary server, primary replica, we need to fail over to the other server. What exactly the terminology of failover in this is? Simply you can define a role changes. That means primary replica will behave like a secondary replica. Secondary replica will behave like a primary replica after completing the failover process. For doing the failover, so go to the availability group. So we can only do it from primary replica. We cannot do it from secondary replica. Right click. Here we can see the failover. Click next. And click next. Here we can see that no data loss, everything, no warnings, role, everything is fine. Click next. And here we need to specify the failover to which node. The server name we need to update here, that is node to DR. So that's mean you are failing over to node to DR. Click next, click finish. Okay, so wizard completed successfully, and here we can see the success status and close it. Okay, now after failover you can see the role changes. The role will change to secondary replica, secondary. If you go to node to server, and if you refresh, here we can see availability. So one important thing is that whenever you fail over to the other node, we need to verify the status. For verifying the status, click show dashboard. Here we can see the status is green and healthy. Everything is fine. Okay. So this is the way we can do the manual failover. Now we'll see the automatic failover. Automatic failover in the sense without manual intervention, the role will changes. Primary will become secondary, secondary will become primary. For doing that, so for doing this demo, automatic failover is working or not, what we'll do that, we'll just restart the server. Node to server, I'm restarting. Restarting in the sense it will down, right? So click continue. Automatically, now this server is primary. It is started restarting, but and then with restart is initiated, automatically failover will happen. Now node 1 prod is behaving like a primary. Here we can see that node to DR, whether servers, partner servers are online or offline, the kind of information also we can see. The node to DR secondary, it is in process of restoring. So until back to online, we cannot see in green symbol. Let's wait 1-2 minutes to bring the node to server online. Yeah, it restarted. Let's connect the server. Here we can see that now it's back to running state. Okay, so that means it support automatic failover, manual failover, both which will support, and it is running with synchronized mode. Okay, but if you want to change the configuration, so we configure a synchronous commit mode. Maybe customer is requesting us to change to the asynchronous mode. Without reconfiguring, we can use the existing configuration to change to asynchronous. For doing that, go to select the availability group properties, and the bottom we can see the configuration settings. So synchronous commit mode or asynchronous commit mode, I am changing to asynchronous commit mode. Asynchronous commit mode. If it is asynchronous commit mode, it doesn't support automatic failover. We have to change to manual failover. And if we don't want to read secondaries, then we can change to no. Okay. And the seeding, automatic seeding. That's mean when you're configuring automatically, the data will seed from primary to secondary. And here we can see this session timeout seconds. The same value is applicable for mirroring. Even in the mirroring, it has 10 seconds timeout. If it is not responding in 10 seconds, witness server will initiate the failover. Again, in the always and also, it will use the 10 seconds timeout period. If 10 seconds, if it did not get any confirmation, or maybe if you think that the partner server is down, automatically failover will initiated here. If you want, you can change the values. Here I'm changing to 20. If you want, you can, and if you don't want to go for any value, particular value, you can go with the default option. Okay, that's it. So again, you can, if you want to change the backup preferences, you can change it, and read-only routing. Okay, so the main configurations changes here, we can do that, and click OK. Okay, now it is asynchronous commit mode. Asynchronous commit mode means it doesn't support automatic failover. Again, when you want to do the failover manually, we have to accept the data loss. Okay, so that means we have to enable or accepting data loss option to do the manual failover. And if you remember, we did change to not readable, right? Let's connect to server and we'll see whether DR databases, that means secondary replicas, whether we can read or not. HRIND. If we're expanding, we cannot do that because we are changing to non-readable. Right? When it is a asynchronous configuration mode, always it is in synchronizing state. Clear? Now we'll see the manual failover. Click failover. So this is the one way to do the failover. The second way we can do the failover is using show dashboard. Once you click the show dashboard, there we can see start failover wizard. By clicking this option, we can do the failover. So once you click this option, you will get this window, and click next, and asynchronous commit mode manual data loss warning, and click next. Yeah, this is important. Confirm failover with the potential data loss. So this option we need to enable. If you not enable this option for asynchronous commit mode failover, configuration failover, we cannot do that. Here we can see that next button is grayed out. So that means the failover process is completed now. Now it's back to, it's behave like a secondary, and node 2 server will behave like a principal server. Principal in the sense primary server. Here we can see the status. Always verify the databases. Here we can see that warning. In this availability group, at least one secondary replica is not synchronizing state and is not receiving data from the primary replica. So when you get this kind of refresh and click the availability groups, go to primary server. Here we can see that it is in suspended. So like when it is a blue color, possible, that means the data has been suspended. For enabling this option, we have to resume data movement. Sometimes it will happen. So when it is in suspended, we have to resume data movement. So that's completed. Now it's back to green symbol, and now it's back to healthy and normal state, right? So this way we can configure asynchronous commit mode or synchronous commit mode, and we see in both configurations, and we see in the failover for asynchronous commit mode, failover for synchronous commit mode. Okay, I hope you understand clearly. If you're clear about it, the next one is that how to add a new database to existing availability group. Okay, already we have availability group, and in availability group we have a one database HRIND. So if they want to add as if they want to add us to one more database, I'll see how to add that. Before that, let me fail over to node 1. Node 1 server. Payload is completed. So now we fail over to the node 1 server and verify the validate the. 1 minute అండి. ఓకే అండి. We did the failover and it is saying that not synchronizing. So usually when it is a synchronous configuration mode, the sync will not happen properly. So always we need to verify, and if any database is in suspended state, we need to verify the replica status and database status. Here it is in green. When it comes to the node to server, it is not synchronizing. Go to node to server, availability databases. Here it is in suspended state. Click resume, data movement. Click OK. Yeah, we can use the auto refresh. So here now it's back to normal. So the next demo is that how to add a new database to existing availability group. Okay. So for that, let me create a one more database. Let me connect the server again. Connect to the node 1 server. So now let me create a new database, and then after that we'll add the new database into existing availability group. So HR UK. Okay, let me create one or two table. So right, so we it's an empty database, and it is in full recovery model. Okay, as I said that when you create a new database, even it is in a full recovery model, it will behave like a simple recovery model. So that is the reason if it is a new database, newly created database, before adding the database into the existing availability group, we need to initiate the full backup. Okay, if we not initiated, we did not take a full backup from newly created database, we cannot add database in availability group. Okay, I did not take backup, and I'm trying to add the database in existing availability group. We'll see that what error message we'll see. So for adding new database in existing availability group, right click on the availability group and click add database and click next. Here we can see that HR UK, it is saying that full backup is required. This means always on database required full recovery model. If you, when it is a new database, until we take a full backup, it will behave like a simple recovery model. So we have to take full backup to make fully full recovery model. Task backup. Okay, done. Okay. Now it will allow us to add a database. For adding a database, right click on it, click add database, right click on the availability group, click add database, click next. Here we have to select the database. If we want to add more than one database at a time, we can do that, but here we have to select the databases. So here I just want to go for only one database and click next, click connect button, click next. And again, so we have to select the options based on the uh, data installation. If you want to go for small size of database, you can select the automatic seeding. Create the database for AWS selected secondary replica. Automatic seeding requires the data log file parser same on every SQL Server instance. That's mean when you select automatic seeding, it will take a backup. That's mean it will create a new database on secondary, and all the data, whatever data at primary replica, all the data will move to the secondary replica. Click next and click next and click finish. Close it. Here we can see there, right? Now the database has been added. After adding, we have to verify show dashboard. All databases, here we can see the databases HR and HR UK. Both are synchronized and healthy. Again, if you want to delete, just right click and click remove database from availability group. That's it. And if you click OK, the database will remove. Adding or removing. So removing is very simple. Just right click and click remove database from availability group. Either adding or removing, we can only do it from primary replica. Right? So that's why we can add new databases. The second one is that, again, if you want to create, so in single server, single instance, we can configure so as many as availability group, but Microsoft recommended number is that 100 availability groups, and single availability group we can create 10,000 availability databases. So it's a number, but if you want, you can also create more, but the recommended is 100 availability groups and single availability group 10,000 databases. That is the recommended number. So we created HR app. So if you want to create a new availability group, again we can follow the same steps. New availability group wizard. Click next. Specify the availability group name. In app, database health detection. Click next. Select the databases, DB properties. Let me drop this database. DB properties. Click next. Same step. Add replica. Replica name is dear. And then specify the configuration settings, automatic failover or manual failover, readable yes or no. If you want, you can select the click add and then add the other replica, endpoints, configurations, backup preferences, read-only routing. Okay, and click next. Automatic seeding. Next. So we can create and available if you want. Okay. Now Now we're clear about how to create availability group, how to add databases, how to remove the databases, how to validate the, how to verify the whether always done is working properly or not. Right? So these are all the things we learned. Now the listener concept. We'll see the listener concept, and then after that we'll wrap up the today class. So sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't because of the network things. Let's see our luck. So availability group listener. So first we'll see that how to create the listener, then after that we'll see the working functionality. So here I want to create a listener for HR app. Add listener, specify the listener name, HR LIS. Port number we need to specify 1234. Here we can see the network mode DHCP and static IP. So DHCP means dynamically it will assign the IPs. So that's not recommended. We prefer it should be recommended is static IP. Select the static IP, and click add button. Select the subnet. So which subnet we need to select, that way information we can get it from Windows team or network team. And I'm selecting. I have two subnets. That's mean network range. So have second option I'm using, and specify the IP for HRLIS listener. So this IP we need to get it from network team or Windows team in real-time environment. 192.168.1.1.124.121. Okay. So when you want to configure listener, we should know that which subnet we need to select, which IP address we need to assign. So this information we need to get it from Windows team or network team. So once specify this, click OK and generate the script and click OK. Because of network IP conflict, sometime it will throw an error. See that what will happen this time. Okay, it's created. Super. So the listener is created. Okay. So what is the listener? So listener means virtual availability group name, or maybe alias name of HR availability group name. We can say that. We can connect availability group using alias name. When using the alias name, it is always pointing to the primary replica. When using the listener, it is always we can always connect to the primary replica. Okay, let's try that out to connect. So now we are in primary replica, HR LIS, and then port number 1234, and click connect. When you connect using listener, always it is pointing to the primary replica. Here we can see HRL. Even if you connect from secondary replica, it will point to the primary replica. Right? So that's mean the listener advantage of listener is that always pointing to the primary replica. So what will happen in real-time environment? So when you fail over, role will changes. Primary will become secondary, secondary will become primary. So that's mean every time whenever the failure is happened, so application team needs to change the connection string. But when using the listener name, so they don't need to change the name connection string. If they specify the listener in their connection string, no need to change it, because whenever failure is happen, always listener is pointing to the primary replica. So this is the advantage of listener. So usually in real-time environment, we are creating the listener. We are giving listener names to the application team. Instead of giving the server name or database name, we are providing listener name to the application team. Right? That is the concept of listener. Okay, so that means we covered, if you summarize in today class, we covered about what is always on, that's mean value of always on, and what are the different type of configurations we have for always on, and how those configurations are working or behaving, prerequisites, and then configuration, failover process, and these things we seen so far. And then comes to the DB refresh. So DB refresh means like we have to remove, for example, if you want to do the DB refresh on HRIND database. So what we need to do, that we need to remove the database, and then after that follow the DB refresh steps. We have 5 steps. We have to follow the 5 steps to complete the DB refresh. Once complete the DB refresh, again we need to re-add the database. That means again we need to add the database. That's it. Only the one step is the removing database from availability group. Okay. So file adding and user adding is same. Like before adding file, what we need to do, that we need to ensure that the location should be same in principal server and mirror server. Okay. Let me connect to the. Okay. So for example, if I want to add a new file for HRIND database, go to properties, files, and click add button, HRIND. We are adding in primary server, and we are using the C data files location right here, and HRIND seg.ndf. So in primary server, we have C data file location. The same location we must maintain in node to server. If your location is different, that this location is does not exist on secondary replica, it will fail, and we need to re-add the data. But here I'm maintaining C data file location in secondary replica. C data files. So we are adding HRIND sec data file. You specify the file names and click OK. We added. So immediately the file will also added on here. HRIND sec. That means we can see the file is added on secondary replica. So the same steps like in the log shipping or mirroring are always on. So maintaining the same path and following the same steps for adding a file. The same for user adding. So we already seen how to add a user in log shipping. Same steps applicable for always on. Right. So the patching procedure, how to apply the patching, and disaster recovery testing is also same like mirroring. So there is no differences. Failover, and before doing the failover, taking the full backup and ensure to have same security in primary and secondary. And based on the whenever application team requesting us to failover, we need to do the failover. So the tomorrow topic could be that tomorrow we'll cover is how we can take the backup from secondary replicas, and troubleshooting and interview question and answers. So those things we'll discuss on tomorrow topic. We'll also cover how to apply the patching on always on databases. All right, so that's all for today, Andy. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask. If you don't have anything, we will wrap up now and we'll catch up on tomorrow same time. Okay. I hope you understand clearly. Thank you so much for your time. I'll send the documents, so you can also refer the documents, and then you can also watch the video one more time if you want to get clear details. Okay, Andy, thank you so much. I will wrap up now and then we'll catch up on tomorrow. Thank you.